The information provided by Trading Forex Price Action to you does not constitute personal financial advice. The information provided is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation, or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice.
Hey guys, this is a weekly forecast for October 3rd through the 7th of 2022. Alright, we'll start off with a Euro Pound pair.
Alright, this is a weekly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since there was a breakout, an immediate break back in right here of this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here, which confirms normal short strength. However, the following month, price came right back up to that pivot high where that normal short strength was created, and thus creating strong long strength. And so for the time being, in the long term, I'm long biased right back up to this pivot high right here. And moreover, on the daily chart, there was a weak long trade that formed right here and a strong short trade that formed right here this week. And so in the short term, I'm short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a daily chart. Let me run you by what's been happening on this pair for the last couple of months. So back in July, at this point right here, there was a weak short trade that formed. And then about 2 weeks later, there was a strong long trade that formed. And so the daily bias was long, or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. And if you recall, like I explained on the overview, there was strong overarching long strength confirmed on the weekly chart. And thus, even if this main target level right here was reached right here, this was a great opportunity to extend a portion of your trade to higher levels. Okay, and then moreover, in mid-September, there was another strong long trade that formed right here, and then a weak short trade formed a couple days later. And so again, the bias was long, or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. And again, that main target was hit right here. And then simultaneously, we got another long trade that formed right here. And just this week, there's a new short trade that formed right here. And so at this point, the daily bias we're working with is between this long trade right here and this recent short trade that formed right here. So the bias levels will be this pivot low and this pivot high right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what's providing short strength for this short trade as well as long strength for this long trade. So let's go over to the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, that daily long trade formed in these areas right here, while that daily short trade formed right in these areas. All right, so let's first see what's providing short strength for that daily short trade. Okay, so as you can see, we have a couple gaps right here providing short strength. I'm going to go ahead and show you the levels for that. All right, the first top level is 92.10, and the lower level is at 92.04. The second gap's top level will be at 91.15. And the lower level is at 91.06. The third gap's top level is at 90.05, while the bottom level is at 89.88. And the last gap right here, the top level is at 89.74, and the bottom level is at 89.46. Okay. And then moreover, we have a nice trend line coming right through here that's also providing short strength. So let me just show you where that's coming from. Okay, so if you zoom out on this monthly chart you on this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now, as you can see, it has many touches on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 touches on it. So this is a trend line that provides a lot of strong short strength along with those other gaps. Okay, so now let's see what's providing long strength for that daily long trade. All right, so again, that daily long trade formed in these areas right here. And the only price element that's providing long strength is this miniature gap right here. Let me just show you the levels for that. Okay, so the top level is at 87.04, while the lower level is at 86.87. Okay, so again, since there's 4 gap levels plus the strong monthly trend line that's providing short strength for that daily short trade, compared to only this miniature gap right here that's providing long strength, strictly in terms of price elements, that daily bias seems to be short. However, like I always say, the lower time frame confirmations have the ultimate say in terms of biases. So let's go ahead and see what's happening there. Let's go over to the 1 hour chart. Okay, so on this 1 hour chart, those daily bias levels is this pivot high right here and this pivot low right here. And just this week, we got 1 hour confirmation of strong short strength. And that's from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. As you can see, we got a breakout and immediate break back in, confirming normal long strength, but price coming right back down to that pivot low to create strong short strength. Okay, so at this point, in terms of price elements, as well as lower confirmation, this daily bias seems to be short. However, I did not take this short entry due to the stop loss level being way up here at these levels right here. So what I'll be looking for in terms of this setup is for price to pull all the way back to these 9100 levels while maintaining the integrity of the lower confirmation strong short strength. Now I need this deep pullback for the stop loss for this daily bias is at this point right here. Okay, and again, even if we do get this pullback to these levels, that's assuming that there's no strong long confirmation that forms on the lower time frames that can override the strong short strength created here. Now, if I could get a pullback to the 9100 levels and moreover maintain this strong short strength lower confirmation, I'll be willing to take a short entry with a stop loss at this pivot high and its main target at this level right here. And moreover, on this trade, I'll be willing to extend a portion to lower levels. And let me go ahead and show you why. Let's go back to the weekly chart. Okay, so back on this weekly chart, like I showed you on the overview, those strong long confirmation confirmed at this point right here. And so we got this nice move up to these levels right here. Now this week, we got a nice rejection candle right here on this weekly chart. Now nice rejection candles often precede a fall right back down to a level that can possibly make strong weekly short strength. And that's from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now there's a breakout, an immediate break back in, confirming normal long strength. However, price could come right back down to that pivot low. That'll create strong short strength. And this situation is often preceded by a nice rejection candle on the same time frame. Now this is yet to be confirmed, so the lower time frames have to show current strong short strength to confirm this event happening. Okay, so to sum this up, if I take that short entry along with that daily bias, the stop loss will be at this pivot high, and the main target will be roughly at these levels. And if we get current strong short strength confirming this weekly setup, price coming right back down to make strong short strength, I'll be willing to extend a portion of that short trade way beyond these levels. Okay, so we'll just have to see what happens with this one, and I'll keep you guys updated. All right, so let's go on to the euro dollar. Okay, if you're having trouble understanding what I'm talking about in terms of weekly biases and lower confirmations, please watch my price action trading course, for that course is designed to provide you the necessary information so you can understand these forecasts. All right, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this price action right here is very strong short, and this move right here still has a way to go, in the long term, I'm short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. And moreover on the weekly chart, since there was a long trade that formed right here, and a couple of weeks back, there was a short trade that formed right here. And at this point, I'm waiting for lower confirmation to confirm this weekly bias. So in the short term, I'm neutral biased. All right, let's talk entries. All right, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by what's been happening on this pair for the last couple of months. So back in March, there was a weak short trade that formed right here against a strong long trade that formed right here. And so at this point, the bias was long, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. However, price came right back down the following month to make another long trade, which was actually stronger than this short trade again. However, although the bias was long, current lower time frame price at this point right here overrided this long bias. And so price came right back down to hit its main target right here. And then simultaneously, we had another short trade right here. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see. And then again, a stronger long trade that formed right here. And so again, the bias was long, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. But again, the lower time frame's current price overrided this long bias, and price came right back down to that pivot low to hit its main target. And the same thing happened again. Another strong long trade formed. but current price overrided this long bias, and thus price came right back down to hit its main target at this level right here. And then last week we had a new short trade that formed right here, and just this week a new long trade formed right here. All right, so let me just get rid of these. So again, last week there was a new short trade that formed, and this week the new long trade formed right here. So the weekly bias levels is between this pivot high and this pivot low right here. Okay, so before I show you what's providing short strength and long strength for this weekly bias, let me just mention those two short trades that I took last year, roughly in these levels right here. I still have 10% of both those positions in these short trades. Now the reason being is because at this point, every time there is strong long strength, current price is overriding those long biases actually. And moreover, the interest rate on this pair is in my favor when I'm taking a short entry. And so at this point, the only way that I'll be willing to take out the remainder of those two short positions is only if there's extreme amount of long strength confirmed through these biases and moreover through current price. Okay, so I'll keep you guys updated with that when I take out those positions. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what's providing short strength and long strength for this weekly bias. Let's go over to the monthly chart. All right, so on this monthly chart, that short trade roughly formed in this area and that long trade formed in this area. Now, in terms of long strength for that long trade, these two gaps right here are providing long strength, while this gap right here is actually providing short strength. So let me go ahead and show you the levels for that. All right, so this lower gap right here is 95.62, and the lower end is 95.52. This upper gap right here, the top end is 97.14, and the lower level is 97.04. Okay, so these two gaps are providing long strength. Let me show you what's providing short strength. So the top level for this gap is 98.23. This is very small. And the lower level is at 0.9816. Okay, so how you want to calculate the strength on this one is that since this gap right here providing long strength and this gap right here providing short strength for this long trade is about the same, you could just eliminate this long strength provided from this gap. Okay, so what's providing long strength for that weekly long trade is this small gap right here, and that's it. Okay, now in terms of short strength for that weekly short trade that formed right here, there's only weekly elements that are providing short strength. So let me just go ahead and show you those. Let's go over to the weekly chart. Okay, so on this weekly chart, we have this small gap right here providing short strength for this weekly short trade that formed right here, and moreover this nice trend line right here. Okay, so let me show you the levels for this gap. All right, so the upper level is 1.0086 and the lower level is 1.0018. Okay, and moreover the trend line that's providing short strength is from this pivot to this pivot right here. And as you can see, it's a very strong trend line. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 touches on it. Now you want to remember when it comes to these price elements to measure biases, a basic rule is that the higher the time frame, the stronger it is, right? So although this long trade only has a small gap providing long strength, while this short trade only has a weekly strong trend line down, or more with a small gap providing short strength, in my opinion, going strictly from these price elements, there's more long strength than short strength. So the bias will be long, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. Now, of course, we're going to need to wait for lower confirmations to confirm this bias. However, like I showed you earlier, in each one of these pivots right here, there was consistently more long strength than short strength through these biases on this weekly chart. However, current price kept overriding it and changing the bias into short. Now that's although the price elements and the lower confirmations were pointing to a long bias. So let me go ahead and explain to you what happened. All right, so first of all, this initial bias we had right here back in March, which was long bias, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. Now, although the bias was long on this weekly bias, right at this area right here, there was daily current price that actually overrided this bias into being short. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you that. Let's go over to the daily chart. Okay, so the overriding of that long bias was due to these daily candles right here. As you can see, there's 3 consecutive rejection candles right here, which shows an extreme amount of current daily short strength and overriding that weekly bias. Okay, and moreover, the same thing happened right here with the consecutive daily rejection candles, which overrided the weekly long bias between this pivot right here and this pivot right here. As you can see, that main target was hit right here. Now, as you can see, in the case of both of these biases, this overriding of the bias through this daily current price happened right before the main target was hit right here, and the second one's main target being right here. Now, I haven't covered this in detail in my price action course at this point, but I do cover the basics of these rejection candles in my beginner's price action course in lesson number 2. So if you have time, please check that out. All right, so let's go back to the weekly chart. Okay, so back on this weekly chart, the new weekly bias is between this pivot and this pivot right here. And for the time being, in my opinion, there seems to be more long strength than short strength. However, we do need lower time frame confirmation of this bias, which is yet to form at this point. But let's say even if that lower confirmation does point to long again, I'm really going to be watching for the overriding of price through those rejection candles that's been repeating for the last couple of months. Okay, so the first thing we want to be looking for is a lower confirmation, first of all, to see whether this bias is long or short. And moreover, we'll be watching current price for those rejection candles that may override this bias. Okay, now I'll keep you guys updated with this one. All right, let's go on to the pound dollar. Okay, this is the monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this horizontal trend line that's attached to this pivot right here just became legitimate with its 1, 2, and 3rd touch right here, and since price has a tendency to want to test strong levels, in the long term, I'm long biased right back up to this horizontal trend line. And moreover, since there was a new weekly long trade that formed right here, that's measured against a weekly short trade that formed way up here, I'm currently waiting for lower confirmation to confirm this weekly bias. So in the short term, I'm neutral biased. Okay, let's talk entries. All right, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by what's been happening on this pair for the last couple of months. So way back in November of 2021, there was a long trade that formed right here, and then a short trade formed right here. And initially, this long trade seemed stronger than this short trade, and so the bias was long, or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. However, if you recall, there was a new monthly trend line that ran right through these levels right here, making this weekly long biases target to be minimized at this level right here, and thus the bias changed into short, or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot low before reaching this pivot high. And then as price fell down to these levels right here, there was a new weekly long trade that formed right here, which was weaker than this new weekly bias level right here. So in other words, the bias was short and price was likely to reach this pivot low before reaching this pivot high. And that main target was hit right here. And then moreover, from April to roughly July, there are 3 long trades that formed right here, all of which were weaker than this last short trade. Now you want to recall, I was mentioning that this new short trade, because it was formed through a target hit from the new monthly trend line that formed right here, these often make extreme short strength. And some of these long trades had a lot of strong strength long in them, but they were consistently overridden by the strong short strength made from this initial short trade right here. Okay, so each one of those targets were hit consecutively, and just this week there was a new long trade that formed right here. Okay, so the current weekly bias we're measuring the strength of is this new long trade against this very strong short trade that formed way back in January of this year. So the weekly bias levels is between this pivot high and this pivot low. So we already know that there's extreme strength formed on this short trade right here because the price element was a new monthly trend line that formed right through here. But when it comes to the price elements that's providing long strength for this new weekly long trade, there's really none. And the only thing that's providing long strength at this point is this nice rejection candle in itself, which actually does provide a little bit of long strength. Okay, so let me just show you why there's no price elements on the higher time frames for this long trade. Let's go over to the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, if you go ahead and zoom all the way out, pull price all the way back, all the way back to 2000, price never got to these levels right here. And so there's no price element that's providing long strength. Now, this is a very interesting case where we know that there was an extreme amount of short strength for the weekly short trade back in the beginning of this year. And now, since price is at unknown territory, there's no price elements that are providing long strength. But you want to remember the ultimate say in terms of biases is going to be through lower confirmations. Okay, so let me show you what I'll be looking for in terms of lower confirmation for this weekly bias. Okay, so on this daily chart, you're on this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now, if price could come up to this trend line, break it out, immediately break back in. However, price comes right up to that pivot high to create strong long strength. Well, that will confirm that weekly bias into being long. Okay, but that said, since this weekly bias was just formed, I'll also be looking on the 4-hour charts for possible lower confirmations. And I'll keep you guys updated with that. But one last thing I do want to mention is that even if we get this strong lower confirmation of long strength, and thus confirming that weekly bias to be long, you want to remember that that short trade that formed roughly a year ago is extremely strong. So I'll always be watching, even if there is lower confirmation of long strength, I'll be watching for a possible override on the lower time frames that confirm strong short strength. Okay, so I'll keep you guys updated with the situation on the lower time frames on this one.
Okay, so that's it for the weekly forecast. Just a reminder, the overriding of the Euro-USD's long strength through current price is a topic I haven't discussed on the courses. For this type of extreme current price override for such a long period of time is a rare scenario. Thus in time I plan to cover it in a more advanced course. But in the meantime, I explained these current price overrides on previous forecasts and explain rejection candles on lesson 2 of my price action course for beginners, so please check that out. And moreover, if you have any questions concerning this, please let me know in the comment section or on Discord. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great week, guys, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.